Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday, March 25th, 2025 Finance Committee for Lynchburg City Council. The first item on our agenda is going to be the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant. Take it away, Chief.
Thank you. This is a grant we get awarded to the city every year. It's split between the police department, the sheriff's office, and the Commonwealth attorney. For this year, $36,705 was awarded. $31,070 will be used to purchase computers and computer memory upgrades for the police department. Sheriff's office will use $3,795 to replace a Toshiba document output and management station, also known as a copy machine. And the Lynchburg Office of the Commonwealth's Attorney will use these funds to purchase a laptop, computer, and related accessories. There is no local match. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Does anybody have any questions?
No questions.
Is there a motion to recommend?
So moved?
Second?
All right. Do you have any discussion to your first?
No, obviously much needed, and I support whatever y'all need at this point, for sure.
Councilmember Wilder, any discussion to your second?
Again, thank you for applying for various grants to supplement the resources for our community, so we appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and, actually, Mr. Mayor, do you have any discussion?
No comment.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and call the vote. Councilmember Wilder,
Aye.
Councilmember Reed,
Aye.
and then I will also be an aye, and that'll be recommended to City Council. The next item on our agenda is going to be the 2025 Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation Grant for the Fire Department to purchase one Homatro Pentheon cutter and one Homatro Pentheon spreader. Chief Wormser?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This grant is a non-matching grant in the amount of $44,770 to purchase what are commonly been referred to as the jaws of life. They're hydraulic tools made by a particular company, in this case, Homatro, and these tools are have met their useful life that we're currently using. We have several sets of them, and so this grant would fund the money to replace those end-of-life tools, to buy tools that are much more compatible with the equipment that we're using now and the modern technology that's out there. And with that, I'll take any questions. This is a non-matching grant.
So just to point out, this is an approval for the submission of the grant application. That's correct? Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion?
No.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the submission of the grant application?
So moved.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Do you want to speak to your motion?
No, again, we're just thankful to the police and fire department for always looking for other resources to supplement the needs of our community and to make sure they have the most updated equipment. So we appreciate that, how we can bring in resources to support that. Thank you.
Councilmember Reed, would you like to speak to your second?
Yeah, agreed. I just think this is crucial, and again, it's just amazing to hear if the citizens don't understand how expensive these items are and how important they are. If you've ever been in a car accident and had the jaws of life used, I have been in a car accident where that was used, and they're so important, and people underestimate how many lives are saved because of that specific equipment, and so it's invaluable to all the many people who are saved from that equipment, and so I absolutely support it, and I hope we get the grant.
And I have nothing further, so we'll go ahead and call the vote. Councilmember Wilder?
Yes.
Councilmember Reed?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes, so that'll be approved. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you all.
All right, the next item on our agenda is the Virginia State Opioid Response Grant for Lynchburg Adult Recovery Court. And this will be Ms. Taylor Jones from the Adult Recovery Court Program.
Thank you. The Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services has awarded $17,490 to be spread across several different parts of our program. So we have recovery housing for those that are in need of transitional housing. We have bus passes and contracted transportation for those who do not have reliable transportation. We have incentives for participants when they meet or exceed program requirements or expectations. We have planners for each participant that enters the program to keep track of appointments. And then we have registration for 2 staff members to attend our national conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions or discussion? All right. If there is no questions or discussion, I will point out that there's no local match required for this. That's correct, right?
Correct.
So do we have a motion to recommend the resolution to City Council?
Move for approval?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do you want to speak to your motion?
Yeah, it's an amazing program. I've been to is it the same one we have the graduation program as well? It's such a moving event. I appreciate the work that we, as a community, can work together to help persons receive that freedom. So I think it's so beautiful. I'm still having it on my calendar to come to the actual classes that you'll be having. So it's on my schedule. I just
Okay.
missed the last ones, but anyway, but I'm still trying to come. But the graduation piece is so moving. Again, thank you for your work with the community partnering for that project.
Thank you.
Councilmember Reed, would you like to speak to your second?
Sure, I agree. I think it's wonderful to continue to support the program. Obviously, you know, the grant funding is essential, and anything that we can do to help support any people that are making the steps to get out of addiction and move their life forward, we need to continue to do. So again, I hope that the grant funding comes through.
Thank you.
All right. And I don't have anything. Do you have anything, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. With that said, we will go ahead and call the vote on this. Excuse me. Yes, we'll call the vote on this. Councilmember Wallace.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye?
And then also be an aye, so that'll be recommended. That was 2 items. Is that 3? Yep. So you're the Opioid Abatement Authority Grant Award?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I was, looks very similar.
Yes, they are.
All right, so I'll just go ahead and let you take it away, Ms. Witt.
Okay, and just to be clear, these are different funds. So the Opioid Abatement Authority of Virginia, there are 3 ways that we get this money. And just to be clear, this money has more strings than Pinocchio. But this, what we're requesting is the city manager be able to execute a memorandum of understanding with the Roads to Recovery to appropriate $193,422 from the Virginia Opioid Abatement Authority. And so Roads to Recovery is working with the city and has applied for these funds to be used for a recovery program, and they're working with Horizon. This will be another 8-bed facility. So let me just kind of walk you through this because you're going to hear about these funds more. So it comes in 3 pieces. So there is a direct distribution that comes directly to Lynchburg, and it comes from every drugstore, Walmart, Kroger, anyone that has a pharmacy that sold opioids, basically, is involved in a lawsuit. And so through the court system, these funds have been funneled through, which we participate in this program to receive these funds. So we're going to receive these funds through 2039. We get a little bit every year through 2039. So the direct distribution funds come directly to the city. And then we have council appropriate those. And we have used most of those resources for the adult recovery court. So that's been very beneficial to them. They used to have a very limited budget, and we've been able to use these funds. Like I said, it has to be very specific use for opioid abatement to prevent use and abuse. And so thankfully, the Adult Recovery Court does a wonderful job. They qualify for these funds. So through 2039, we're going to receive about $1,085,000 or $850,000, excuse me, for these direct distribution. So if the Adult Recovery Court can't utilize all those funds, we'll be looking for another community partner to help us spend those funds. The second pot of money, these are funds specifically allocated to Lynchburg, but you have to specifically apply for them. So Roads to Recovery, their executive director came to me and let me know they were working with Horizon to do an additional 8 beds for recovery, and ask if there were any of these opioid funds that could be available. And so I helped them do an application, so Roads to Recovery has applied. They have been successful in receiving $193,000. Through 2039, the total pot that we will have in this type of funds is $642,000. But you do have to apply for these funds for a specific use. And thankfully, Roads to Recovery has been able to do that, and it's really going to help our community. The third pot of funds, this is a competitive grant process statewide. So I helped Horizon Behavioral Health when council voted to give Horizon $4 million. I was able to work with them to apply for this competitive grant where they were awarded $1.9 million. So the rest of the $2.1 million did come from the city, but we were able to get at least almost half of that from this opioid grant. And again, they're using it, as you're aware, for that recovery program. So I just kind of wanted to give you this overall, because I'm going to continue to be coming back to you to appropriate funds for these various use. I will say, well, I think Greg and Ryan both left, but what we're really trying to use these funds is in our community. There are a lot of really large organizations that will contact us and say, hey, we'll spend your money for you. And we're really trying to keep these local. But I did have Ryan and Greg go through all the requirements, and they didn't have a program that really qualified unless we would put like Narcan vending machines on every corner or something. There's just no way to really, for them to utilize the funds as successfully as these other nonprofits that we are working with. So again, we're requesting the city manager be able to sign the MOU. The Virginia OAA is waiting on that MOU to be able to send the funds to us so that we can pass them on to Roads to Recovery. So that's what this is. This is the request to appropriate the funds and to sign the MOU.
So is there any action required by us, or is this going to be coming before the full council?
This will come to full council at tonight's meeting as a
Okay.
general business item.
Got it. Thank you. Does anybody else have any discussion? Mr. Wilder? Ms. Reed? Mr. Mayor? All right. Thank you, Ms. Witt. The next item on the agenda is going to be to revisit the City Council's Finance Committee guidelines.
Who before and everything? And that's-
No.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Just a comment. Again, I'm so glad to see so many organizations working together. How, I think Humankind, you said, or Horizon, I believe, and Roads to Recovery, all of them for these projects, working together for the betterment of our community. Not saying this is my money, that money, but just our community's money, that we can support each other and work better for our community. So I was going to commend your staff and your team working with them to pull these funds in, also getting to support our city. Thank you.
The reason it looked the same is because I had to refresh.
Oh,
It was stuck. So the next item on our agenda will be revisit the City Council's Finance Committee guidelines, and this will be presented by Donna Witt.
so what you have in your packet are two things. This was brought back to the Finance Committee by the full council, and what you have are the revised guidelines that were presented here with the changes on them. And then you also have a copy of the original one. So this is for your discussion and decision on which way you want to go.
All right, is there any discussion on this, Mr. Wilder?
So just so I know, the original ones, because the original ones are the current financial committee guidelines, is that the original ones?
That is correct.
That's correct.
Is there any discussion, Ms. Reed?
So as far as the finance, as far as the team, and your staff, are you recommending the original goals that we had originally, or?
That would be my preference, but that's for your decisions. What was added was the accountability measures as the fiscal agent for Lynchburg City School, the review of managed vacancies, and the review of nonprofit funding and/or assistance, and proposed policy for the use of public funds.
I mean, I just feel comfortable with the way the policies currently were. The tech team has, I think you mentioned last time, you're sure about 12 persons in your staff when we did budget cuts. The school system has their own budget, they have their own audit as well. City has this audit as well. Our county department here, the city, the chief financial officers, her team has continued to receive high marks from, I think it was a state board of accreditation we received an award for recently. So I appreciate the work you're doing, and I think we need to continue to keep the current policy that we had in place that you're comfortable with. Thank you.
And just to add, I'm happy to bring you managed vacancy reports if you want those.
I was going to go through some of the things that you had in this memo.
Okay, sure.
If that's okay. So, couple things. One is I walked through the memo that that's published in the packet that you guys provided. So, the only recommendation that I would make, in lieu of the language for proposing accountability measures at the fiscal agent for Lynchburg City Schools, I do think that it would be beneficial if we're going to continue categorically funding Lynchburg City Schools to try to do that in a committee and then take it to council. That's where I'm at with that. I'd welcome your feedback on that. The second part, we don't need number 7 because you've already said you're going to provide those quarterly, so we can strike that. That's easy. Review of nonprofit funding and/or assistance. Really, that should be a audit committee that's doing that. So we can strike that and potentially bring back an audit committee for that. Now, the thing that was most interesting to me in reading this memo was the, let me see here. Hold on, go into it. Where was the part about the cost savings? I'm trying to find it. The old program.
I think it was a program for staff to bring forward cost-saving measures.
Correct. And I'm trying to find, I know I saw it in the memo.
And we had a program a while ago. I don't know that it officially ended, but we have had that program in place where staff could bring ideas for.
The administration has implemented an employee gain sharing program to solicit innovative cost savings ideas from city employees in the recent past, and we certainly consider doing so again. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's it. Is that something that you probably are the greater historian on this? Can you speak to what we used to do and don't know
Well,
if it
we
ended?
had, it used to go through the employee committee, that staff could bring ideas to them that they felt like would be cost savings, and if it came to fruition, then they would get, I think the maximum was a $5,000 bonus.
Got it.
But what it turned into, it became hard for the committee to make decisions because a lot of times it was decided that, well, that's part of your job. You
Sure.
should be doing that. So it really wasn't something that was over and beyond. So it just got difficult for them to make the decisions whether they were suggesting something that really was part of their job, that they should be doing that anyway, or whether it was something beyond that.
And I think that's the thing that's most interesting to me, is because sometimes the people that are actually doing the work see the most waste, right? And I would love to figure out a way to empower our workforce to always be looking out for ways to save taxpayer dollars and be good stewards of the resources that we're taking from the citizens and the businesses in this community. That's what I'm most interested in. So I don't know what that could look like or would look like, but if it's, I mean, so when I say proposing financial policy, it's almost kind of to the effect of how can we as a committee, right, when we have the time, throw some ideas out there and say, hey, is this something that we could do that could, save our citizens tax dollars, promote entrepreneurship and innovation within the city workforce, those sorts of things. So that's, you see where I'm kind of headed with that, Mr. Patrick?
Yeah, and I think anytime anyone on the committee has an idea they'd like us to explore, we would certainly be willing participants in that. Where I've seen gain sharing, we've called it gain sharing in the past, gain sharing
Sure.
programs work kind of internally is, first of all, you don't run them continuously because oftentimes it becomes a way for folks to complain about other departments. So you run, and you don't run them every year because there's not enough time in between, but you know, every 2 or 3 years, you set up a gain sharing program. And you know, in my past, it was the budget staff that would primarily run it. And employees there'd be a submission process to submit ideas. Budget staff would review all of the ideas to see which ones actually provided an opportunity for ongoing savings in the city budget. We would narrow those, we would narrow down the submissions to the ones that we thought had really good potential. We would then kind of work with those employees to put together a presentation on their ideas. And then those employees, because you might get 150 submissions. Generally, you're going to have less than 10 that have a real opportunity to provide kind of ongoing savings. Then we'd have those employees come and actually present their ideas to the city manager's office in this instance. We did it as like a Shark Tank style contest in the past. City manager's office was kind of briefed prior to the presentations by budget staff, and then they would kind of accept or not accept these items at the Shark Tank style event. But the cool thing is for those employees that generated ongoing savings, the way it would work is in the next budget year, obviously the budget would enact those measures. The city would save money in the budget. But during that fiscal year, we'd make the change, and the employee would actually receive 10% of the ongoing savings. We did up to $25,000.
Wow.
And obviously, we can do a smaller amount, but if you're saving the city $250,000 a year, a $25,000 one-time payout, we thought was worth it, right? So you could work through all of the details there, but you wouldn't run it every year. You would try to make it an event. I think so. Folks were really interested and excited about participating, and then hopefully we'd get some really good ideas. But so that's the type of thing I think we'd be happy to do.
After the budget process.
Yeah, oh yes, yeah. That would be something we kicked off in the summer and we wrapped up hopefully before the end of the year.
So,
End of the calendar year.
so if what you're telling me is that we can float those things in here without having that guideline in here, I don't even see the necessity of that then at that point. Is that what you're explaining?
Do you see this coming to this committee to make the decisions about?
I mean, I would say if you
brought items that
we
were
brought, like, if Councilmember Reed brings an idea for something for the city to do in this committee, right?
Yep.
That you guys go back, you come, you do your presentation, wow, that's a great idea, right? I think it should come here first if it generated out of here. That's kind of what I'm
Okay.
thinking, not
Yeah,
necessarily.
that's doable, but I
Is
was thinking the staff would not want to come to this committee to present. That if we did something like
do
an
it with the
event,
city manager's office.
that would be better.
Well, I mean, I would want to be invited to that event, because that
Sure.
sounds like it'd be something worth going to,
Be
like
fun.
Shark Tank style.
Popcorn, snacks, all that stuff.
Sure.
It'd be
Yeah.
fun.
Who's gonna be the hosts?
Yeah, probably Greg.
No, I get to be a judge.
Oh,
Last time
oh.
I had to be the host, so
Oh,
I wouldn't be
well.
So
judge.
you wanna be a judge this time?
Yeah, but
Fantastic.
certainly if it was a roll call item that came from the committee member, we would certainly follow up on that and bring it back to this committee.
Sure. So with that being said, I mean, I'm comfortable with striking 7, 8, and 9, and I would prefer number 6 being revised to do the categorical funding of Lynchburg City Schools in here before it goes to the full council. That's just my thought on that, and I'm welcome to any feedback from staff or from the council members.
What was that last part you said?
Just striking 7, 8, and 9, and then the only thing would be to visit the categorical funding for Lynchburg City Schools in here first, instead of trying to flush that out in work sessions and council meetings to, you know,
I'm so sorry.
try to figure that out, take the whole amount, and then determine the categorical funding.
As far as,
I was answering your
yeah,
question.
I was, yeah, I got you. I'm
Go
sorry. As far as category funding with the school system, I know how it worked the last time. What were the school system thoughts on that, and what were the comments about that? I'm so sorry.
I don't think they particularly care for categorical funding, because if something changes in their budget, then they have to come back for council action, so it just takes longer to make that management work. But as far as submitting their budgets, I think they're used to now submitting their budgets by category, so that's up to them to determine in those categories what they need and present that to council. I don't know that adding a step to finance committee would help, because I feel like the superintendent
Sure.
or their CFO is gonna present that to full council. So, and it's up to them to develop that budget, and we only have so much say-so in how they spend their money once we appropriate it. So I don't see that it adds, I think it just adds more time
layer.
to it that delays
enough.
them being able to do their budget.
Fair enough. Fair enough with that. So, but we are still doing the categorical appropriations, correct?
That's up to
That's the
council.
council.
So schools is gonna submit their budget by category.
Okay.
They were doing that long before we were appropriating funds by category. It's how they have to, propose their budget, report their budget to the State Department of Education. You know, at that point, it's up to council. If you actually appropriate the funds by category, if you just appropriate lump sum and let them work within those categories. But it's
And-
up to council.
I found I wish I had the date on this, some old minutes where the comments were actually made that, oh, we'll just give them the money and then they'll figure it out. And it was kind of the lump sum. I don't like the idea of going back to the lump sum. I like the idea of sticking with categorical funding. But if you think that that's gonna put an unnecessary layer in there, I can understand that as well. So with that being said, I am going to make the motion that we reaffirm the current guidelines.
Okay?
So I'll make that as a motion. Is there a second? All right. I have no further discussion. Do you have any discussion to your second?
No, support. Nothing to add.
Do you have any discussion?
You know, just again, I'm thankful for our finance team for the years of service to our community, for receiving national awards. My hat's off to you because it's such a challenging position, and to take for so many things coming your way when it comes to finances. And I'm so thankful that, you know, when I was on the school board as well, we always looked at services we could combine. So whether school services or city services, that was always one of our assignments, is to save taxpayer money. You know, that's everybody's job, to me, to be the rule is to make sure you're helping save taxpayers money, whether it's transportation, or the case may be. We always looked at resources. What can we combine? We're combining the procurement process, so how we can do that better. So we're always looking at areas, and we all need to empower our chair, the city manager, to continue to empower our staff and say, how can we continue to save persons money? How can we be more effective? How can we be more efficient in our assignment? And that, to me, is the city manager's job, to continue to empower the staff, to continue to mention to the staff. You know, every time we come back, we're saying, right now, we have a 5% cut in all services off this kind of cut. That's one of the jobs the city manager does, is asking the team members, we gotta do more budget cuts. We need to reduce our budget because this is that, this is this. How can we reduce the expenses of our city? So that's one thing that, to me, the city manager does. His job is to continue to look at the budget and how we can save the taxpayers money. And I appreciate team for always looking at that and holding that high. It's not like you're wasting funds, but you're doing your best, and we appreciate the work you're doing. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, do you have anything? I do have one question, kind of segueing off what Mr. Wilder said. Do we know of any time where the city's actually reduced its expenses year after year?
Probably not year over year. Have been times in the past where the instructions to departments has been to reduce their budgets from current adopted budget for the next budget.
But the overall expenditures, the overall expenses, the overall money that the city spends grows every year.
You'd probably want to look ongoing expense versus ongoing expense back in 10, 11, 12,
Yeah.
13 timeframe.
Yeah.
It
During the
would've been really
recession,
close.
I would
it
say that-
definitely went down.
That's probably the only time I can think of, just to point out, so that it's typically not something that we're seeing from staff as far as trying to reduce the total number of expenses is not something I'm historically used to seeing
Not to
happen.
pick nits, but what I would say is, we have, much like everyone's experienced inflation, right? None of it happens in a vacuum. The city
Sure.
does as well. If we are slowing the rate of expenditure growth by being innovative, you can't call it a budget cut, right? Because it's not necessarily reducing the overall number, but it's doing our job, right? I mean, that's what we're here to do, is to make government services more efficient.
And you can't cut funds that haven't been appropriated yet.
Right, but we can cut the cost of an existing service, right? Or we can reduce the cost of what we would expect the service to cost in the next year if we do it in the same way.
Right. Did you have something, Ms. Reed?
I do have a quick question. On that note, just curious, because I know that you said you had to cut staff significantly. You've never been able to replace the staff that you've had to cut over these years.
No.
So while expenses have gone up with things you've had to purchase in order for your department to function, it hasn't been with people.
No, that's correct.
So you've been doing more work to keep the city operating with less people. Okay, so you've never been able to increase your staff back after you've had to cut
No.
positions. I just want that to be noted as well.
But I would like to say, I have a number of rock stars like these behind me that do the work of three
Right,
people.
so with that said, that is something
Yeah,
that needs to be
yeah.
noted, that you've been able to continue to take on more and more work because we're still having to get the job done with less people, so I appreciate that.
Correct. Yeah, but really it's because I have phenomenal staff.
And
that
that's
are
it,
doing
and that's a
more
lot of
than one
departments. I mean,
job.
there have
Yep,
been
absolutely.
cuts in many departments. We've had to grow in other areas because other areas have needed that, but we haven't been
That's
able to grow in
correct.
others, so appreciate your hard work.
But if we're going to discuss cuts in your department specifically, did we actually have a reduction in force and finance?
We have in the past.
How long
Right.
ago?
Oh, probably back to the recession.
Back to the recession,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's, just to be
2009,
clear on the history of that.
2010. Yeah, it's been a
Everything
while.
saw a reduction in force around the time of the
yeah.
recession back in 2010.
Yeah.
But as far as that goes, any positions been eliminated from your department since then?
I've absorbed a couple
You've absorbed a
since
couple
the
positions
recession. Yeah, just trying to cut costs.
since the recession, so
Mm-hmm.
that's, just to be clear, that's not a budget cut, that was a reaction to a
That was
global
saving
financial
money.
crisis.
Yeah,
Right,
well,
it was a reaction to
yes,
a global financial
but
crisis.
Since then, trying to be as efficient as we can in finance. Because we
Appreciate
don't
I just
generate
want
money.
to make it clear, because it's, being portrayed that your office was cut by an action of council, but I don't believe that was really
No,
what
I wasn't
happened.
No,
indicating
it was
that.
through the
So-
budget.
I wasn't
yeah.
indicating that.
This won't be, the financial policies are not on tonight's agenda. They'll be on the first meeting in April.
Okay, all right, let's
Right?
go ahead and call.
The
call vote.
guidelines, I'm sorry, the guidelines.
Got it, we'll call the vote on the guidelines. Mr. Wilder?
Aye.
Ms. Reed?
Aye.
And then I'll also say aye. All right, the next item is going to be the financial policies, revisiting the financial policies, and that'll be presented by Donna Witt, CFO.
And this was from something you provided, Councilmember Mischins, about changes specifically to the budget policy. And then staff did come back with a report from our financial advisors why, specifically why we shouldn't set our revenues before our expenditures. And then I believe that was the one change that this committee actually voted on to bring forward.
That's correct. Do you have anything, are you trying to find something, or do you? have
Well, I
anything?
was gonna say, I'm struggling in my packet here. There's a lot. But I believe that was where the changes were in the budget policy.
That's correct. Policy 3.
Staff would strongly recommend no changes to the policies unless we work together with Davenport, our financial advisor, and they're telling us there's changes that the credit rating agencies would like to see, right? So these financial policies are sort of a covenant that we make with ourselves to make good financial policies, and a covenant also that we make with credit rating agencies and bondholders that we are going to manage ourselves responsibly. And you know, that second part is really important because we want to align ourselves with what the credit rating agencies want to see. We want to provide ourselves with the flexibility that the credit rating agencies want to see, because we want to maintain as high a credit rating as we possibly can, primarily because at the end of the day, that determines the interest rate at which we can borrow money, and the lower that interest rate, the longer we can stretch the city's resources.
Sure. And just to be clear, the main recommendation was to have city council establish the tax and fee rates to set revenue levels prior to the city manager's proposal of expenditures. So what that means, the recommendation was that as a city, we propose our budget in the same way that you would in your house, right? In your house, you don't turn around and say, hey, this is how much I need to spend, and then go figure out how to find the money. You see what's coming in, right, and then you spend accordingly. And that is a method to kind of prevent, you know, excessive spending, things like that with government. So that's the idea. Is there any discussion on that?
Just so I'm clear, thank you. Can you explain to me, is that how other cities normally do that? I know the bond agencies were not recommending that. So can you tell me how other cities normally do that?
I don't know of another city that would set their revenues first before their expenses. And the letter from Davenport, I thought, did a really good job explaining why. Because we've got set expenses that we know we have to pay for. So you've got to figure out what it's going to cost to provide services, what it costs to make our debt payments each year. So, because our job is to provide services in the most efficient and effective way we can. So we've got to figure out exactly what that's going to cost to provide the same level of service each year. So, and then you got to figure out how you pay for it. So with the rates, or with our tax rates as well as our fee rates, on what that looks like, because we also look at all of our projections for all of our revenues based on the market and whatnot, and that's one reason that this, looking at 26 is so different, is because we're used to seeing substantial growth in sales, meals, and lodging taxes, and that's not happening. So knowing that, and you still got to provide these services, if you're not going to cut services, you got to figure out how to pay for them. And our credit rating agencies are looking at, do we have a plan to make sure that we are providing our service within our current revenues and what that looks like? Because one of the things that makes our bond rating strong is when you provide general obligation bonds, which we do, the council is giving their word that we're going to meet those debt obligations. And so, and part of the reason that they can do that is because in Virginia, we're looked at especially well, because there is no limit to what our real estate rate can be. There is no set limit by the state on what our personal property tax rate is. So we have the opportunity to set those rates to be able to provide those services and make those debt payments.
Got it. So, and if there were no recommendations for changes to any of the financial policies for the current fiscal year, is that correct?
Well, actually, you got a little ahead of me. I hadn't gotten to that yet. So as of now, I have none. But
So-
I will be working with we'll go back to the rating agencies next spring, when our line of credit is about to expire. So it was on my to-do list and you got ahead of me. So I'm not there yet,
So
but
with no action, they remain the same.
that's correct.
So, that's the case, unless anybody has any further discussion, I propose we move on.
So plans to do it the way we continue been doing that?
But yeah, with no action, it
Yes.
remains the same.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then in the next 3 or 4 months, I'll be working with our financial advisor.
Then we can talk about it.
And then we'll bring back if there's any recommendations, and then if not, to reaffirm our current policies.
Sure.
There was no vote to do anything yet. This was just a
Correct.
proposal. Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, so next on the agenda, if everybody's okay with this by consensus, I would like to move the revisit resolution for federal grant guidelines to the next meeting because of the amount of work you guys put into this downtown improvement district. Are you guys supportive of that? That we move that to the next meeting and move on to the downtown improvement district presentation? Staff, do you have a,
I was, if you weren't gonna recommend it, I was.
okay.
to
So,
move that.
is committee, are we good with that? Moving on to the downtown improvement
Yes, that's
district?
fine, yes.
Okay, consensus, we'll do that. And that presentation will be coming from Ashley Kirshner, DLA Executive Director. Good to see you, Ashley.
Good to see you.
Chairman Miskins and members, we're really excited about this presentation. This is something that Chairman Miskins actually brought up and kind of engaged in conversation with us around a downtown improvement district and what it might mean for the city. So we've got Ashley Kirshner, the Executive Director of the Downtown Lynchburg Association, and Chris Boswell, our Downtown Lynchburg Association President here. We are going to run through what a downtown improvement district is and some Lynchburg-specific information here. I'm going to turn it over to Ashley. We're going to run through this relatively quickly so we can have a little bit of conversation at the end. Next slide.
Yes, ma'am. Next slide. Okay, so we're going to start really high level here. So what is a downtown improvement district? You may have heard the phrase business improvement district, same exact thing. We're going to use the phrase downtown improvement district because we find it more appropriate to all of the things that these types of districts do. So at the very high level, it is a public-private partnership where property owners invest in the area's vitality and economic success. It operates by collecting assessment revenues from the property owners within the district, which is a very, very clear defined boundary. It enhances but does not replace regular city services. And funds are used for things like marketing, maintenance, beautification, public safety enhancements, business support, et cetera. We're going to come back to this and talk about all the different things that a fund like this can be used for. It must be approved by local governments and/or property owners. I'm going to explain that a little bit more later. And it typically requires enabling legislation at the state or local level. We do have very specific guidelines in Virginia State Code around districts like this. Okay. All right, so where are they used and what are they used for? So they exist in a lot of different settings. Urban downtowns, this is a very common mechanism and used in cities our size and larger. Commercial corridors, so shopping districts, tourism areas, historic districts. A lot of times in historic districts, they are used for maintaining cultural landmarks and supporting local businesses. And then lastly, this mechanism is also used for suburban retail centers, so the management, the marketing, all of that for that kind of mechanism. Okay, so what are they not used for? Let's talk about what these types of funds are not used for. General government services. So again, they supplement, they do not replace the services inside of a district. They are not used for zoning and land use regulation. They can advocate and often do advocate for policies that they think will benefit the district, but they do not control zoning, permitting, or land use decisions. They are also not used for large-scale public works projects, things like major infrastructure, bridges, highways, sewer systems. And they are also not used for direct law enforcement, although partnerships with law enforcement and security type functions are something that they're used for. So we'll talk about that as well. Okay, so let's talk about the formation of these types of structures. So to establish a downtown improvement district, which again is defined really by the state as a special tax district. What happens in the actual creation is that the city council does need to go through a public hearing process and then vote on the district to be formed. Now, there's also a provision in Virginia State Code where 50% of property owners must sign a petition, but that is only if the funds will go toward the creation and the maintenance of city roads. Outside of that, the only thing that needs to happen for this type of district to be created is that city council goes through a regular public hearing process and then votes. However, what does need to happen, or what would happen in a process like this, and what is recommended and what most cities do, is that they go through a major process of public engagement and many, many months leading up to a vote on something like that. So there's internal planning and feasibility. So some of the things that Greg's going to go through are the numbers surrounding a concept like this. But internally, a committee would be put together to talk about financial feasibility, what are some of the things that it might fund, where are the needs that we are aware of, and then that would be brought out to the stakeholders, primarily the property owners that this would impact, but also business owners and other people in the community to find out what they think the needs are. What are they interested in receiving additional services for? And what would they like to see the governance structure on that? So all of that happens before anything is brought to council. So to dig a little bit more into a downtown improvement project to help you kind of vision what this could be, and I'm sorry, I feel like I should also mention I'm going to say business improvement district here because that was the language in the master plan. Business improvement district has been listed in the master plan for many years as a potential mechanism for advancing the causes of downtown and for handling the city services needed to really maintain and take care of a dense urban district. All right, so first, public space enhancements. So it could be used for decorative paving, widening and ADA accessibility, street furniture, benches, trash cans, bike racks, wayfinding and navigation. This is a really common use of downtown improvement districts, so better signage, things to help people get around, street lights, decorative lighting, and green spaces, planters, trees, parks, parklets, and mini plazas. Can also be used for beautification and maintenance. So a very common use of this type of fund is street cleaning and waste removal, graffiti mitigation, having people on the street, on the ground, doing that work on a daily basis, seasonal decor and landscaping, things like hanging flower baskets, which as I mentioned yesterday is one of the top things that people ask me about is hanging flower baskets. And that kind of thing needs weekly, if not daily maintenance, so something like this could fund that. Public art and murals, so creative visual enhancements, and also things like facade improvement grants. So also public experience and safety enhancements. Ambassador programs, which often are the people that do things like graffiti mitigation and daily cleaning, also provide visitor assistance and reporting on maintenance needs. So if these people are on the ground, they are dressed in a way that helps you understand that they are part of the city, they are there for your assistance. They can help with directing people toward parking. They can also be on the ground and dealing with any sort of homelessness outreach that needs to happen. Any sort of partnership with security and law enforcement to just have more boots on the ground. There are a lot of functions of a clean and safe program that would be able to do that, as well as crime prevention with things like business safety training and deterrence programs. Also, a major function of downtown improvement districts is also business support and marketing. So event programming, festivals, markets, concerts, and parades, destination branding, identity building campaigns and marketing materials, all kinds of online marketing, collaborative advertising and promotions with the downtown businesses, and then retail and business attraction marketing as well. And then lastly, economic development and growth efforts. So all types of activities related to business retention and recruitment, supporting startups, entrepreneurs, things like our Launch LYH program would be something that very much fell under a downtown improvement district. Workforce development, real estate and development advocacy, encouraging mixed-use spaces and adaptive reuse, whether that was through incentives or just through programs or education, as well as market research and data analytics. So no one downtown improvement district in the country does every single one of these things, but every single one of these things is being done by one of these entities in cities all over the country. So obviously a lot of this stuff is a lot of the work that we do now, but a lot more could be done as well. Okay, so let's talk about the governance and how something like this would work between the city and a private entity to actually do the work. So most cities, the vast majority, partner with a nonprofit organization to actually manage the downtown improvement district. So first, the city would establish the priorities along with the stakeholders, go along that process. Once they then pass that entity, they would select a nonprofit management partner to then administer and do the work of the DID based on the priorities that were set forth. And then the organization would continually engage stakeholders. There would be a board that would oversee that work as well, and that board would be created from stakeholders. And then lastly, the city would ensure that those funds are allocated properly, requiring annual reports, budgets, and performance assessments. So really quickly, some examples in Virginia. There are many examples across the country, but these are the closest to us. Roanoke has had one since, I believe, the late 70s. They provide business support, marketing, event management, public space beautification, and advocacy for economic development. Downtown Roanoke, Inc. is their nonprofit partner. Richmond, Stanton, Norfolk, Winchester, all of these cities have an improvement district and partner with a nonprofit partner to manage those funds and to do the work. And again, you can see all of the different things up there that they do. All right, so how to measure the success and sustainability of something like this: foot traffic, business growth, business retention and attraction, crime reduction, safety perceptions, property value increases, stakeholder satisfaction. All of these things would be measured to make sure that the DID was doing its job and was actually succeeding. And then lastly, just, these things are usually not forever. What happens is they are voted on, and then there's a 5-year term put on it. And after that 5 years, the organization that is running it comes back to the city and says, okay, we'd like to renew this district. Here's all the information, and another full public hearing process would happen to ensure that the community wanted it to continue. Okay.
All right, we'll run through some of the Lynchburg-specific information here really quickly, and then we may need to come back at the next meeting to go through questions on this, but I want to make sure we get through the presentation. So we looked at what a downtown improvement district boundary might look like, and what we did here was use the boundaries that are outlined in DLA's MOU with the city. And this is what that map looks like. We might want to make a few adjustments. I think we're picking up some residential in Diamond Hill, and there's some area below Blackwater Creek there that is really all city-owned. But if you look at this district, we've got about $270 million in taxable assessed value, about 200 acres, 674 parcels. And you can see by assessed value what the type of property it is. It's commercial, single-family, multifamily, and then a huge amount are exempt as they are government or city-owned facilities. Next slide. So if we looked at revenue that we would generate from the DID, now keep in mind what you generate revenue in a DID by assessing incremental pennies on the real estate tax. So for the sake of argument, 1 cent on the real estate tax would generate about $27,000 in revenue to the DID. 10 cents is about $275,000, and 20 cents is about $550,000 in revenue to the DID. You see on there we have the 10 largest property owners by assessed value. The Virginian, the criteria are 1 and 2. You see Lynchburg Grand, you see the Bank of the James building. West on Main is about 13 properties owned by, I believe, Tony West, and then some, I won't go through all of the rest of them here, but we'll make this presentation available to everyone. Next slide. And finally, unique considerations in Lynchburg. First, DLA has existed in one form or another for 27 years. A lot of times, these districts are formed when the downtown agency that is going to support them is formed. So DLA has been providing services to the city for 27 years without a DID. So we would have to figure out how to make those two kind of mesh up together. Many existing DLA donors are downtown property owners. So if DLA was going to be partially funded by a downtown improvement district, they would likely lose some of those.
Did we get that number, Ashley?
No, not in a day.
But we'll have it when we come back for
Okay.
questions. Maybe most importantly, DIDs cannot replace existing city services. One of the most important things we would do in this process is go through and benchmark the current level of city services that are provided, because we're not looking to replace existing services and then fund them with a DID. And then more importantly than that, I think what we had discussed is we probably wouldn't come back until after the budget was done to start having serious conversations with council about this, but wanted to kind of lay the groundwork here. I think we'll come back to the next finance committee meeting.
Okay.
We'll go through questions that folks have, but just wanted to introduce the topic today. I wish we had a little bit more time to go through it, but I think hopefully we will at the next meeting.
Got it. Thank you. We'll see you guys at the next meeting. Donna, is there anything that stands out from the general fund reserve for contingencies?
Nothing new for the reserve for contingencies, and our top revenues that we look at, flat.
Got it.
So sales tax, we compared to budget, we were down about $19,000, so flat. Our electric was up a little bit, but that's because January was really cold. Meals tax, down $17,000 compared to adopted budget, so flat. Lodging was down $31,000 compared to budget, so flat. And amusement tax was down $5,000 compared to budget, so they're all coming in just like really close to budget.
Got it. Does anybody have any last, real, do you have anything? Okay. Any quick roll call? Anything?
Just thank you for the presentation about the Downtown Association project. I was looking on my iPad and I couldn't find the
Yeah,
the presentation, so that's why I wasn't really informed about it. So,
We'll send it out. We
Yeah.
didn't get it done until yesterday.
I understand, yes. Well, thank you for that, appreciate it. So looking forward to reading more information. I'm interested in learning more about it. Sounds very interesting. Some of the items I mentioned at the PDC meeting about the care and the refeed and some other things. So I'm glad to see all that's in there. So I'm glad to see how that develops. Thank you.
Councilman Reed? Mayor
Thank you.
Taylor? Thank you, staff. It is 3:59. The next Finance Committee will be April 22nd at 2 p.m., excuse me, at 3 p.m. And this meeting is adjourned.
session. Welcome to the March 25th, 2025 City Council Work Session. The city manager will go over the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the City Council, good afternoon. First, we have our work session, and I'd like to, between when I saw you last and now, had an opportunity to present the fiscal year 2026 budget. In the interim, have had opportunities to engage with our public at several different places, one in each one of the wards of our city. So I do want to give thanks to Diamond Hill Baptist Church, Lito's Pizza, Givens Books, and our Hillcat Stadium, who all entertained, and I saw many of you there, which was fantastic. So just thought I'd highlight that to each one of you. Before us today, we have an opportunity to engage our utilities director, and as a shout out, one of the things at Givens was a comic book. So you're going to hear from what I lovingly call him Aquaman. So Aquaman, pass him that comic book, is going to, so we proposed increases to certain water funds. By the way, that's a rare edition. Be careful with it. We have 3 different funds, each of which are managed very appropriately and wonderfully by our utilities department. We're proposing an increase in those because of the costs associated with providing. And there's an enterprise fund, and so this afternoon, we have an opportunity to hear from Tim. We've received certain questions from you and our public about the city's proposed fiscal year 2026 budget. Donna and Greg will walk us through some of those, give us opportunity to feedback and questions from there. We do have a business item briefing this afternoon. And again, remember, business item briefings are those where city staff takes the time to engage you and an opportunity for you to ask questions ahead of a vote. We, to the degree that we can, do all that we can to make sure that you are not hearing about, engaging upon, and voting on an item the same day, because it's just not a good business practice. And then also you have a couple different closed sessions, one of which is a continuation because we ran into a pinch of time this last time, and so it's a follow-over. So, Mayor, with that, if you are open and ready, I will go ahead and turn it over to Tim to go ahead and engage on our proposed increase to the water rates.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Tim?
Tim?
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to give you an overview of FY 2026 water, sewer, and stormwater budgets and our proposed rates. Next slide. Before we get into the specifics, I'd just like to take a couple minutes to recognize our water resources team and the important work they do. Of the current department directors, I may not quite have the most years of service with the city, but I believe I'm the longest-serving director. And I have to say, in all my years in this position, I cannot think of a time that we've had a more dedicated and talented staff providing services that are absolutely essential for public safety, public health, and our city's continued growth and prosperity. This work requires a well-trained and experienced team of water professionals. Their workforce is led by a leadership team with over 300 combined years of service to this community, bringing an institutional knowledge and expertise that's impossible to quantify. Our water and wastewater operators, maintenance, and laboratory staff ensure that billions of gallons of water each year are safe to drink and our streams are protected while continuously meeting or exceeding regulatory requirements. Our utility line technicians are always on call to respond to water and sewer emergencies regardless of the time of day or conditions, all while inspecting and maintaining over 1,100 miles of pipeline and other critical infrastructure. Our engineers and construction coordinators are managing more than 100 active projects at a time to address Lynchburg's aging infrastructure, from planning and design through construction and final inspection. The list of essential workers and their important roles goes on, all working together daily at our plants and in the field to make sure that we're providing the citizens of Lynchburg with services they expect and deserve. From the crews that work the holidays or miss the Super Bowl to repair water lines, to our operators that came in the day before a shift and slept on cots when a winter storm was approaching to make sure that they were here to cover their shifts. I'm extremely proud of our team of 160 employees who are absolutely committed to providing the essential services that touch every resident, every visitor, every business, every hour of every day. While our FY26 budget and proposed rates do not fund any new positions or initiatives, they do continue to invest in critical infrastructure needs and cover the increased costs associated with performing the same level of service while working towards our goal of renewing 1% of our water system per year. Next slide. So just an overview of the proposed rates. In the water fund, our current rate is $3.29 per HCF, which is about 750 gallons. Our proposed rate is $3.45. In the sewer fund, our current rate is $8.30 with a proposed rate of $8.65. And this is to be in compliance with our CSO consent order. And I'll get into the more specifics about that in a few minutes. And then our stormwater rate, we're proposing to increase from $4.93 to $5.15. Looking at the average household water and sewer consumption, that means a typical monthly impact of about $2.90 per household per month. Next slide. When we compare ourselves to the Virginia average, we fare very well. And looking at our surrounding jurisdictions, we're not the lowest on the list, but we're certainly down near the bottom of the list as far as the cost of our services. These rates are based upon using 5,000 gallons per month. Our average is about 4, so our typical average monthly bill is less than $85 per month, but we're still about $10 less per month than the Virginia average. Next slide. There's a similar story with the stormwater fee. The Virginia average stormwater fee is about $8 per single-family unit, and our average is about $4.93, or our rate is $4.93 currently. And then, and this is for all the localities that have a stormwater utility in the state. Next slide. So our service charge is the fixed rate that we charge on our water bill before anybody uses the first gallon of water. Our rate has been at $7.69 for the last decade. We have not increased that, but you can see that our rate related to that is very low compared to the surrounding localities. For example, if you're in Bedford County, you pay $58 before you use the first gallon of water. And the benefit of having this rate low is it puts more control in the homeowner's hands. I mean, if they want to conserve water, they can save money on the water bill versus having to pay that upfront cost. Next slide. So just kind of going over some best practices for rate setting and our goals. We want to make sure that rates are fair across the board and that they reflect the true cost of providing the services. So one thing that we don't want to do is have one customer paying more than they should because they're subsidizing another customer's fees, say with the industrial surcharges or whatever. So we want to try to set the rates equal to the cost of the services that those rates are paying for. Go back just 1 second, sorry. Just goals, our goals are minimize rate increases, provide enough revenue to provide quality water, sewer, and stormwater services, meet our regulatory requirements. We're one of the most heavily regulated departments in the city. And then also make sure that we're complying with council's fiscal policies as well as the CSO consent order financial requirements. Next slide. When we're putting together our budgets and rates, there are quite a few challenges. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of unknowns or variables that go into setting our rates and establishing our budgets. And there are a lot of unknowns or factors that can significantly influence how the revenues we generate occur, or also how our expenses, how much we have in expenses. So weather plays a big factor in this. So, for example, wet weather, we have decreased water consumption, which impacts the water revenues, but at the same time increases revenues to the sewer fund because of additional hauling from septic collars, but it also increases the water resource recovery facility operational costs. Dry weather, on the other hand, we have increases in water plant chemical and electrical costs because of additional flow, but we also get the benefit of the additional revenue that's generated because of higher demands. And then we have other factors such as water purchase can vary greatly from year to year. The number of water and sewer connections we have vary, and then we don't know how many water line breaks or sewer line repairs. The graph on the right is showing the first 7 months of water consumption this year compared to the previous 10 years, and we're down about 9% year after year as far as the average goes. And that's generally across the board, we're seeing a decrease in water consumption. Even with the growth in the city, this is overall water consumption is down, which impacts revenues going forward, obviously. Next slide. Just looking at our infrastructure, we're responsible for 1,100 miles of water, sewer, and storm lines throughout the city, which is equivalent from here to Dallas. A little bit about our water system. We have 475 miles of pipeline, a couple of treatment plants, numerous water tanks and pump stations, about 3,300 fire hydrants, and over 20,000 meters in the Pedler Reservoir. Our sewer system, we have about 455 miles of pipeline, the treatment plant, and about 12,000 manholes. And similar with the storm system, we have 183 miles of pipeline, 6,900 storm inlets, 2,700 outfalls, and over 900 best management practices that we either maintain or inspect. Next slide. This is just a little bit about the water system priorities. When we're establishing our priorities for the water line replacement, we're looking at the age of the water line, so 100-year-old cast iron water lines or older. We have a lot that are older than that, are susceptible to corrosion and waterline breaks. Undersized pipe has an impact on fire flow. Asbestos cement pipe, we have a lot of that from the county annexations. That's an inferior pipe, as well as it requires special handling when our crews are working on it. Last year, council approved a capital spending plan with the goal of replacing 1% of the water lines per year, or about 4.5 miles. Currently, we have 95 miles that are in need of replacement now, and over the next 30 years, we have another 85 miles of pipeline that will be added to that need to be replaced. Next slide. So some additional priorities are increasing regulatory requirements. We've talked before about the lead and copper rule revision, so I won't go into that, but there are additional regulations related to water supplies, emergency reporting, and PFAS. Fortunately, we do not have any PFAS issues with our water system. That's the forever chemicals that's widely reported right now as being an issue. System resiliency, we want to make sure our system is resilient and we don't get into a situation similar to Richmond. We're in the middle of an emergency response plan update and a risk assessment both of those are mandated updates that we're doing, but we're also taking a more critical look at our infrastructure just to make sure we're not missing anything that could put us in a situation similar to Richmond. Next slide. Summary of our water fund budget. FY25 operating budget is $18.8 million. FY26 we're proposing $19.6 million. There's no new positions or major initiatives in that budget. About $379,000 represents the 3% cost of living adjustment proposed by the city manager, as well as other benefit and cost increases. Debt service is related to how much we're using our our line of credit, thank you. And then also just additional costs associated with projects. So that's driving the debt service. Contractual services, supplies and materials and utilities, a lot of that's inflationary type increases. And then from a timing standpoint, capital outlay is when we purchase large equipment that varies from year to year depending on the cycle that we're in. Next slide. Summary of our water capital budget. The top is just a list of some ongoing projects that we have. Downtown renewal, 6th and Madison water line replacement that's ongoing now. We anticipate spending about $3 million per year for lead service lines, and then ongoing cellular meter installations. New projects for FY26 are Daniels Hill waterline improvements, Fillmore waterline improvements, and the Abert and James River pump station. That's an existing raw water pump station at our Abert water filtration plant in Bedford County. It's in need of upgrade and renewal. So that's related to that. Next slide. Our sewer system priorities. We want to continue to work towards fulfilling the obligations of our CSO consent order, complete the Blackwater CSO tunnel by 2027. And then after that, there's only a few smaller CSO projects that remain that we have to get done. Beyond that, we continue to work towards rehab and then maintenance of our sewer system and sewer lines, and then comply with future regulations. The PFAS with their wastewater system may be a big issue for us. We don't know yet. We haven't sampled for it, but we know we take a lot of leachate from landfills, and we know that's a big source of PFAS, and that's going to impact biosolids disposal, land application, and then that's going to be further complicated by the closing of the regional landfill because we dispose of a lot of our solid waste or sludge at the regional landfill as well. So that's going to be a big ticket item we've kind of got to keep our eye on for the next 5 to 10 years. That's going to play a big role in the sewer fund. Next slide. Our sewer fund budget at FY '25, we're proposing at current budget is $29.9 million. FY '26, we're proposing $31.2 million. Again, no new positions or initiatives. The big dollar item in contractual services, periodically, we need to clean the James River Interceptor. It's the largest sewer line we have. It's on a very flat slope, so there's a lot of sediment and debris that settles out in that line, which takes up its capacity. We have an opportunity this year with the way the funding fell and meeting the requirements of the CSO consent order that we can afford to do that without increasing rates beyond what is required by our CSO consent order. So our plan is to clean the James River Interceptor this year. But then other increases include salaries and benefits, again, associated with the cost of living adjustment as well as benefit increases. The admin payments to the water fund, all of our administrative positions are in the water fund, and each year we assess how much should be charged to the sewer fund. So that's going up some this coming year. Chemicals is related to just inflationary increases, and then we have some decreases with indirect cost to the payments to the general fund as well as debt service from some debt rolling off. Next slide. Capital budget summary for the sewer fund. Our ongoing projects, obviously, the Blackwater CSO Tunnel, Phase 1 of Richland Hills, the Water Resource Recovery Facility sludge holding tank renovations, that should be wrapping up this year. New projects are Golf Park CSO, Rivermont CSO. Those are small, just relatively small projects that are really addressing more of a sewer system issue than a CSO issue. The Garnett Street building demolition. This is a building, it's the multi-story building on Garnett Street near Concord Turnpike. It's kind of wedged between CSX and Norfolk Southern Railroad tracks. And it's the one with all the graffiti and everything. It's really becoming a hazard as well as an eyesore. The sewer fund purchased that a number of years ago because of a CSO project, and we needed the property. But it's really, as I said, becoming a hazard, and the plan is to demolish that with the sewer fund.
And just to point out, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? So that code enforcement that we've talked about and so all those same things that we want our, properties to reflect in our city, whether or not it's, residential, commercial, what have you, we should do the same. And so we have it. And so we've tried our best to figure out a way in which to maybe resource that as something that somebody, commercially and or other would maybe want to invest in. We haven't got any nibbles. Parking's kind of interesting, and, well, your front door is a train. So, and thinking through that, that's why that's in there. I just want to make sure that everyone understood. Yep.
Thank you. The SSES stands for Sanitary Sewer Evaluation Study. These are areas where we go in and evaluate the sewer system and prioritize repairs, and then a small sewer line replacement on Tate Springs. Next slide. So looking at the median household income calculation and why our sewer rates need to be at the rate we're proposing. So we calculate what the median household income is going to be July 1st of 2025, and that's based upon the most current data and projected inflation rates. So it's not exact, but it's our best estimate. And so we're projecting the MHI to be $62,519 July 1st, backing into the and that there's a whole methodology that's established in our consent order that we have to follow to get to that point. So that may vary from other sources, but we follow the methodology. So based upon that, we back into the sewer rate to make sure that the average household sewer bill, annual sewer bill is 1.25% of the median household income. And as a result, we landed on $8.65 that the rates need to be July 1st. Next slide. A little bit about our stormwater history, and because it's a little bit important and in the slides coming up. Stormwater utility was created July 1st of 2012. It's really created for several reasons. One was water quality issues and water quality requirements related to Chesapeake Bay and local water quality issues that gets woven into our permit that we have to address. And then other compliance components of our storm permit also are funded through the stormwater utility. But also anticipated infrastructure and maintenance and replacement needs. Pretty much stormwater has been out of sight, out of mind for decades and not really addressed. We've been spending a lot of time assessing the condition of the stormwater infrastructure, and we're finding a lot of problems and a lot of needs. So part of the utility was to fund some of that, to take the burden off the general fund. It was created using the Stormwater Advisory Committee, which was comprised of citywide stakeholders from residential businesses, nonprofits, et cetera, looking at the stormwater needs and trying to develop a methodology to fund those. And the committee recommended a new utility to proportionately distribute the cost across the city. Next slide. So this is where it's important because we have a lot of significant stormwater infrastructure needs. Currently, we know of 300 outfalls that need to be repaired or replaced. We have significant flooding issues in Fort Avenue and Wythe Road, as well as significant infrastructure failures there that we need to address. We anticipate those costs to be anywhere from $10 to $20 million that are not included in this CIP at all. But we need to be looking at that. So if you look at the graph, the blue is their operational budget costs projected over the next 10 years. It's got a steady growth, but not anything dramatic. But because this is a new utility, the first debt service wasn't paid until 2019. So it's going to be years before any debt starts falling off. So over the years, the debt component of our budget is going to continue to increase if we're going to fund some of these replacement needs. Next slide. So this year, the stormwater operating budget, FY25, is $4.5 million. We're proposing a very minor increase to 4.6. You can see the cost increases there. Debt service is a component of that. Salaries and benefits, contractual services, and community development charges. And that's community development does a lot of the work that's related to compliance with their permit, as well as public works, but each year they budget what they're going to need the coming year, and we work that into our budget. So this coming year, community development costs will go up, public works will go down. Next slide. Just a summary of capital projects in the stormwater utility. College Park, that's an ongoing project. It's already authorized and funded. The design is complete. We're waiting on some permitting issues to be resolved before we can actually move ahead with construction of that. And then there's a list of other stormwater projects. The Hill Street storm improvements, for example, that's a complete pipe failure that needs to be replaced as soon as possible. Next slide. So in summary, water is an essential service for the community. All three funds, water, sewer, and stormwater, face significant infrastructure needs. Rising project and operational costs, staffing challenges, and increasing regulatory demands. But despite all this, we're still well below the state average with our rates with all three funds. We definitely don't like to do rate increases, and this year we're trying to minimize those as much as possible. But we also don't want to be leading the way with our rates either. So I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have related to our capital or operating budgets or anything that I presented.
Is there any questions for Mr. Mitchell?
Mr. I
Mr.
thought maybe
Wild?
you said Miss Jones. I didn't know whether or not.
No,
it was,
no.
Mitchell.
Mr. Mitchell.
Again.
Mr. Wilder.
Yes, yes, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate your work. And the one thing I've noticed with the water and situations, I don't care what the weather's like, y'all have to go out regardless. I mean, I know one time, I live in the old Diamond Hill area, and it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, they were out there working in the streets. I mean, it was freezing cold, so I appreciate the work that you do, your team does, and it's amazing. And making sure our water system stays safe and clean. So I understand there's some increases, but basically, it's funding, it supports the services that you're providing. So if we didn't do the rate increase, what would happen? I'd take it out of the regular general budget?
So if we did not do the rate increases, the first thing that we'd probably do is scale back on the capital improvements that we were doing. The rate increases, as I said, with the sewer fund, that's mandated by our consent order. Water fund, we have a little more flexibility, but we would start scaling back projects. There's really not a lot that we do that's really discretionary. It's all regulatory. Most everything we do is regulatory driven as far as staffing levels at our plants and everything else is regulatory driven. And most of our costs are fixed costs, so regardless of how much water we're treating, we have the same amount of costs. So it would impact the capital fund first.
And I know our system is over like 100 years old, I believe.
It is.
So we have an old city like that, you have a lot of situations. My house was built 1850, so with the sewer system of that nature, it's an old city. So you have a lot of challenges. So I appreciate the work that your team does in navigating all of that and making sure the services stay, the cost of it is still only like $290 a month, average approximately.
So the rate increases that we're proposing this time equate to about $2.90 additional per month per household.
All right. So again, I appreciate you trying to do your best and evaluating all the needs, the infrastructure needs that the city has, and trying to make sure it's something economic that we can afford, and also so it's not all doing things at one time for all these infrastructure needs. We have a 100-plus-year-old system to do. But thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Still, you might have some of them old Cypress water lines at your house over there. Have you seen those, Tim?
I'm sorry?
Those old wooden water lines?
We have a piece of one in our office, yes. We do.
Yes, yes. Is there any more questions for Mr. Mitchell? Ms. Timmer?
Thank you. Not so much a question, just a comment. I really appreciated the way that you outlined your process in assessing the rates, both with regional comparison, as well as just kind of the start to finish approach of how you came about finding those numbers. That was really resourceful, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question. How are we with our infrastructure to support the water plant if we were to have a massive power outage like occurred in Richmond?
So we have standby generators at all our critical facilities. They're exercised on a regular basis. We have redundancy, so we would not lose the entire city since we have 2 water treatment plants at 2 different ends of the city. We do have some redundancy. We can get water from the Abert water plant all the way to this side of town. It would be in a limited situation where we might have to issue some water restrictions, but we would still have water. And we can also get water from College Hill to the Abert side of town, the western side of town. But that is a little bit more restricted. It's restricted by, there's a pump station at Wards Ferry Road, and it's limited to about 3 million gallons per day, which is about half the use in that side of the city. But our system, we are very fortunate that our system is very redundant. And as I said, you know, we're looking at the situation in Richmond to make sure that we don't have any situations that might result in the massive failure that they had. And we don't think we do, but we're constantly looking for things like that as well.
Thank you.
But I'm very confident with our backup generators, and we know that they operate because we exercise them regularly.
Sure, and I would just, thank you, and I just, make sure that that's always got to be a priority for us.
Absolutely.
And I know it is for you.
Yep.
I appreciate the work you guys have done in making sure that everything's gonna operate when we need it to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Anyone else? Thank you, Brother Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so Mayor, we're transitioning now to, we heard some questions or things were posed, both at the CIP and since, and so Donna's going to run you through a couple of what we've heard and kind of walk you through that information. I did want to point out, as we're transitioning, we did receive from our local delegation, from Senator Peake and Delegate Walker, during the General Assembly, they had contacted us, considering what had happened in Richmond, and was very, they were, to the degree that we needed to be more resourceful, or if we needed help from the state as it relates to our water resources across the board, they were very helpful and very, very encouraging, and asked us those questions. So I just wanted to point that out, that at that time, for what was happening there and what they were going through, that they thought about Lynchburg and contacted us. So I just want to say thank you and tell you that that had occurred. So, Ms. Mayor, if it's okay, I'll turn it over to
Ms.
Donna
Witt.
Witt.
Thank you. So just as a few things we're going to talk about briefly here. Council did receive some information on the proposed capital improvement program, and we've also got some information to provide you on the reassessment for the medium single-family homeowner. A little bit of an update with the Wigington Road project. The city building inventory that was requested by council, we're still working on that tool, and it should be available to be provided at your April 8th work session. And then a little clarification on the property toolkit, where we've had some questions. And then, and Tom Martin is here to help me with some of those questions. Our tax relief for the elderly and disabled, we want to go over the proposed modifications, and our Commissioner of Revenue, Mitch Knuckles, I think is behind me. And then you've already heard the presentation on water, sewer, and stormwater. So just to move along here, just a reminder on the technical adjustments and the couple of mistakes that we made in CIP, which was the Hollins Mill Road Bridge replacement with bikeway improvements that was already appropriated, the Lynchburg Center for Industry Phase 2, which is TAP grant that had been appropriated, and then moving Miller Park Pool from 27 to 26 to allow for that construction to be done without interfering with the pool season. And then we had a request to put a updated CIP and make that available, and that is now on the city's website. And in the total, it's got black lined where what we changed, so you can easily see what's been updated in that document, but it is on the city's website right there with the proposed budget. Our real estate assessment, we realized we had an error here. Or really, we took information from Jeff Bandy's presentation and made an assumption we shouldn't have. Because what he provided was calculating the median increase. He actually used sales data, which arbitrarily inflated those numbers. So when we used his slides and did the math, because you know I'm all about the math, what we were looking for was the median assessment information. So recalculating that with the correct information, instead of like a single-family detached home seeing an $813 increase, it would be more like a $299 increase based on, you know, your home. So if you're looking at the median, it's more 299 than 813. And then you'll also see for the condos and the townhomes, it is significantly different and lower. So just wanted to make sure that we get that information out there. It is on the website to make sure that the median information is corrected and provided for citizens.
Next, updates to the Wigington Road project. So in the 5-year plan, based on that project's approval, we are going to need to fund about $3.8 million in road improvements here coming up soon. That funding is broken down based on what was proffered in the rezoning. About 3.1 of that would come from local funding, and just shy of 700,000 would come as a contribution from the developer. Right now, what we're looking at is about $2.9 million would be needed in 2026 for the intersection improvements at Wigington and Old Forest. And we're trying to nail down the year that we would need to make improvements. It's a signalized intersection that we've got priced there at 501 and Wigington Road. So this is the, I always get the direction messed up. Tom, what's the direction on? Southbound. Ramp improvements at Wigington and Desmond Doss. This is, I think, the price for a signalized intersection there. So we looked at how we might fund these, right? So a couple of state programs that we look to first. First would be Smart Scale. Smart Scale is sort of a large scale, impactful project funding that we work with Commonwealth Transportation Board to access. This project is not going to qualify for Smart Scale. The way the Smart Scale project funding has changed over the last few years really rules this project out. It's unlikely it would have been funded in the previous iterations of Smart Scale, but it's definitely not an option at this point. So we looked at revenue sharing, which is the traditional way we would fund a project like this. But we have put in applications for revenue sharing all the way through the fiscal year 2029 application cycle. So potentially for the 501, for the Desmond Doss, Wigington Road intersection improvements, we might be able to wait through the 2029 application cycle. Likely, we will need that project in the CIP before then. So revenue sharing is most likely not going to be an option. So at this point, I think we're still looking at options for projects that we might not fund in 2026 to find the funding here. Because quite frankly, we're going to need this money soon enough. And our capacity in fiscal year 26 isn't such that we're just able to add new projects at this point. So we've given you a couple options there. We're still kind of refining our projections or our recommendations there. But bottom line is we're gonna need to fund these projects soon. There is no magic bullet from the state, unfortunately. So it is going to have an impact on our local CIP. So just wanted to bring that forward. We are still refining our recommendations for the projects we might use to replace or that we might replace with these projects. But just wanted to bring that to council, and if there's any questions, we'd be happy to do our best to answer.
Ms. Reed?
So I just did simple math. 750 units, which we still don't know if that's the actual number, right? Because of the grayness of,
I think 750 is essentially the max that they could fit on the.
okay, so 750. And guesstimating that they'll sell for 300, that would be like today-ish, but they're gonna be built out over time. So we know that number is gonna go up because in the next 10 years, we're gonna see an increase in value. That developer stands to, if there's 750, and you do this, the simple math of an average sale price of 300,000, that's $225 million if you just do simple math.
Gross.
Yeah, sure. And I know it's already passed, but I am like mind blown that we're gonna spend $3 million on the road for them. Like, and then consider having to cancel projects that potentially help families, enjoy one of our parks. And I know these are possibilities, but like, I just am mind blown. The amount of money that's going to be made off of this development and that they're not covering that cost. It's just unbelievable. Have we ever, I'll ask you, Ms. Witt, since you've been here the longest of the staff, that you recall, been asked to do such a thing?
Tom can probably answer that better than me, but not that I can recall.
To be fair, Tom's been here a lot longer.
Okay. Mr. Martin, do you recall a time where the council has ever been asked to pay in the millions for a development this size, or any size for that matter, to do road improvements?
Councilwoman Reed, I think as I alluded in my presentation to you last month, this was a very unusual presentation. And no, not in the millions. Again, the Rosedale was a payback over time if they developed commercial, but no, nothing to this point that I've seen.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Ferrari?
What was the number, well, I guess 2 weeks ago? It was 2.8, is that correct? Projecting, there was the 5-year estimate was a different number. Is that,
That was my number.
Yeah.
has
was
it
lower.
changed since 2 weeks ago? Or is it the same?
I think the number's the same.
Number's the same, okay. And I would assume we would have to bond this, so we're actually probably not gonna be using one-time money. We're likely gonna have to finance this, which means we're going into debt, so it's actually more than 3.7, call it 3.8. Can we get it?
This would be something that we would use the line of credit for.
So generally speaking, and I know we're spitballing here, how much in total would bonding this out, financing this project to be? 5.5, 6?
Probably,
And I know I'm putting you on the spot,
yeah,
so
you
forgive me.
are. So it'd probably be like 4.5% interest rate
Okay.
for 20 years.
Okay. Do we know, just generally speaking, what that comes out to on a total?
No.
If that has to be
You're
a,
Mr. Math.
Yeah, I would tell you,
If that
you're
happens to be
probably
one,
looking,
come back to
you're
this,
probably
fine.
looking at 5 to 6 in total payback.
okay, so if we went on the low end, 5, but doubtful. I want the public and this council to come back to this very conversation. If I ever hear about the amphitheater vote again, I'm gonna say baloney, because what happened in that vote is we actually reduced the city debt by over $1.5 million to pull off the amphitheater. This actually increases not only the upfront cost by 3.7, but increases the city debt by almost 1.5 to $2 million. And I'm looking at every single person who voted for this thing. I want to see how you four figure out how to pay for this, and then go back to the developers, back to the community and say, I mean, at least on Bedford Avenue, right? There could be an argument if we should be making those improvements or not, but at least there's been a developer who's gone in, you see what's already there, it's already built, it's already developed, and jobs are already happening, and you can see it, it's tangible. Now we're pulling the rug out from that. To use a former colleague's word, this is the most rotten vote I've ever seen this council take, not just this, a council take. Because now the city taxpayer is on the hook for $5 to $6 million. And 3.7 needs to, if we're gonna have this considered again or be brought up, we need the full financial picture about what this is gonna be. Because this is a point blank reason why I said we should have pumped the brakes on the development. So we could have a full financial picture about what is being signed up to. Unfortunately, we can't even change the outcome, because once the zoning's changed, that's it, folks. So to the news media, to the folks at home, $6 million. Just like that.
Ms. Timmer?
Mr. Patrick, Ms. Witt, I just wanted to thank you all for prioritizing this in the budget and recognizing that this is a crucial concern, and honestly, one that's been neglected for about 5 decades. And so I'm very appreciative that we are putting this forward and looking at how we want to approach this in this fiscal year. And then you brought up smart scale funding, and I'm still the newbie on the block. So I'm going to need your help with that a little bit. But my understanding is it's fairly fungible. So are there ways or projects that we can shift some of that smart scale funding, not necessarily into this, but into another road priority and shift that around and then move money into this kind of downstream? What options are there, or can we meet and discuss and kind of look on?
Smart scale is, every smart scale project is approved by the Commonwealth Transportation Board, approved by VDOT. We end up with a contract with VDOT for each individual project. Smart scale is not very fungible. Revenue sharing, and maybe more so, but with revenue sharing, we're going to max out what we're eligible for every year. So, even if we did apply for revenue sharing here, we're essentially then not using it for another project that might have been eligible. Unless there is, unless we somehow end up with I'm trying to think of, what is it when you get an award in the federal budget, an earmark in the federal budget or something like that, or an earmark in the state budget for a project like this, which is very unlikely. Very unlikely. Donna laughed. That's how unlikely it is. It's not likely we're going to have an opportunity for outside money to be supportive in the project.
Yeah, and because we've established I'm old, the way VDOT funding used to work is that if we had done an application for a list of projects and received funding for those, if something came up that was something that was an immediate need, VDOT used to have a process where you could potentially swap some of that money around to get it to the project you needed it for first, and that's gone. They don't do that any longer. We're not allowed to move it from project to project, that once we've applied and it's been awarded, it has to be used for those projects. So that's why we have committed funds all the way up through 29. So our next application process would be for fiscal year 29.
I'd love to sit down with y'all further specifically on this and kind of brainstorm, because you know me, I've got a million questions. But I really appreciate y'all putting this together and prioritizing this need. Thank you.
Mr. Manager?
Oh, I'm just going to share that I just simply, any and all ways in which that we can leverage federal, state, and or local dollars, we're going to do it, right? And so there are limited, but we wake up hustling and we keep hustling. So however that we can try. So we'll keep trying.
Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if we can't move funds from project to project anymore, are we kind of stuck with this $14 million roundabout on Vassar and Langhorne?
That is a fully funded, yeah, the city doesn't have any money in that. That's a fully funded VDOT project.
I thought that was a revenue sharing
Yeah, so
project.
it's mostly smart scale. We have had a conversation with VDOT. What we realized in the design of this project was the water main coming from the Peddler Reservoir runs right through that area. And in order to get the grade right for that project, we're actually going to have to relocate that water line. So there's some additional costs there that we have put into revenue sharing in this year's budget. But I think $9+ million of that is smart scale.
Got it, because one of the questions that I had was about shifting that, because it looks like we're going to be spending more money on the 501-221 one-way pairs than we planned on, as the cost goes up on that. Is there a way to shift the funds from that to 501-221?
I would say unlikely, and we'll find out.
Yeah, that was one of my first questions there. The second question, the Bedford Avenue Bridge and the Hollands Mill Bridge. Do we really think we can accomplish a bridge replacement in 1 year like the one on Bedford Avenue? I guess is the question that I have about that first. Is that doable?
Here's my limited knowledge here. So I know it takes a year to design a bridge. Lee Newland has pounded that into my head. But what happens is we sign that contract, so the cash flow for that may fall in past 12 months, but since we signed that contract to do that job, we appropriated in that year.
Can you put that picture up that I sent? I sent Metchie a picture here. And it's just a concern that I have with the timing of these, because they're back to back, and I'm not saying to not do the projects. Is this smart to do these on top of each other?
Is this sufficient, Mr. Christian?
That's perfect. If everybody can see it, unless it's good enough for me.
If you can't, just zoom me in.
So down on the right-hand side is the Hollands Mill Bridge. Up at the top left-hand corner is the Bedford Avenue Bridge. Right now, as it looks like in here, we're looking at FY '26 construction for Bedford Ave and FY '27 for Hollands Mill. That right there, if we end up overlapping those two roads being closed at the same time, that's gonna be a nightmare for people that live there. It's gonna be a nightmare for public safety response in the whole 9 yards, because it's only gonna give you that, either people are gonna be cutting through neighborhoods, which we don't want, right? Or they're gonna be having to go all the way down Bedford Ave and then coming back down Rivermont and so forth. So my question, I guess my request from that is, can we make sure that we don't shut down Hollands Mill Road while we're still replacing the Bedford Avenue Bridge? As in, get Bedford Avenue open before we move on to Hollands Mill? Because I think Hollands Mill, the money's already been appropriated for that. Is that correct?
Yes.
That was one of the technical
Yes.
updates you presented earlier.
Yep.
And then Bedford Ave, I think that is fully federally funded on that replacement. Is that right?
Yeah, that's a state of good repair. Thank you. I knew
That one's in the worst shape, I guess. So I kind of, I'm like, can we?
We'll get you a good answer with lots of
Push
context
it
on
out
that.
6
Yeah, I
months,
don't-
push it out a year, just something to make sure that we're not really putting those people on an island.
So what I hear, Mr. Mission, what you're saying is figure out the timing of those just as projects, not necessarily as the resources to meet the expense associated with Wigington Road.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm just
Understood.
looking at that as if I lived in that little corridor and I couldn't take Hollands Mill and I couldn't go one way down Bedford Avenue, I'd probably be a little frustrated for a little while if both those access points were closed at the same time. So I feel like we should get one done before we move on to the other, since we're gonna be impacting that neighborhood pretty significantly with that construction. That's all I got for now. I think anything else I come up with, I'll shoot you an email.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Reed?
Just one more point. I would also hope that if we're gonna be considering canceling any projects of any sort, that all that money goes into our schools, since we are still short, I don't know, $50 or $60 million of what they've been asking at least for the projects that they desperately need. So that the thought that we would be trying to take money from projects to give to a developer that's gonna be hundreds of $1 million richer after this project is also mind-blowing, for the record. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Timmerman.
I do just want to acknowledge before this council and the public that road infrastructure is traditionally and historically a primary city responsibility, and the roads have been neglected since the annexation. So it is very valuable to be able to address that, leveraging private opportunity in order to address a critical infrastructure need. While I very much appreciate Ms. Reed's comments, there's a lot of deferred maintenance in the schools. There's a lot of deferred maintenance in our water lines. So we're dealing with a deferred maintenance issue pretty much citywide right now. And so we're having to balance a lot of priorities. I'm very grateful for a unique housing opportunity to come to this community and stabilize the housing market in a number of ways. We can have that debate again on another day, but I just want to acknowledge and address that roads are a city function, and I'm, again, very grateful that this is being prioritized and addressed in this budget cycle. Thank you.
Mr. Ferrari?
What are the Bedford Avenue improvements?
It's a bridge. Oh,
It's primarily pedestrian safety improvements, simply because you've got Elizabeth and you've got all the new development out there.
So the actual development that's there has brought more foot traffic. So by pulling $1.4 million out of this part of town, we're actually pulling, and no need to respond, but we're actually pulling $1.4 million worth of traffic safety improvements, which were just opined by my colleague about, we got to make these improvements. We have a developer right now who's putting currently millions of dollars on the line to bring jobs, investment, economic activity to a part of town that has not seen it in decades, as opposed to a farm off of a road that was started out as a dirt road in the 40s. I think it's inherently hypocritical. $1.4 million could have been improved right now into that corridor. Now it's not. So.
Mr. Missions?
I've got a couple comments and questions, I guess, about this, the Wigington Road improvements. Who paid for the Greenview Drive improvements when they put Cornerstone in?
Do we go back to the oldness again?
I don't know that.
The Greenfield?
I can't answer that question off the top
But
of my head.
that's something that we can probably find, right?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless, Tom?
I'm not.
Okay, we'll get to the answer.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
And then also, who paid to connect Bedford County and Campbell County with Enterprise Drive when
That
Windhurst was
was
developed? That was VDOT?
But first, we'll find out.
Yeah, the first Greenview. So those are infrastructure projects that supported fairly large developments that were the responsibility of government, right? So if we're going to compare apples to apples here, you can't compare Bedford Avenue to Wigington Road, not to mention the amount of development that's happened off of Wigington Road over the years between Boxwood, Bethel Park, Bethel Estates, and so on, and continued Aladar Place over off of Hawkins Mill. That's also development that's happened off of there that's in the city. There's a lot of subdivisions back there that are fed by Wigington Road that people kind of forget about that they're in the city, because when you're out there, you feel like you're in Bedford County. My mom lives out there, but she lives on the other side of the line in Bedford County. So I'm very familiar with it. And I think those improvements on Wigington are long overdue. That's all I have.
Moving on. We had some information requested on the property toolkit, so just want to make some clarifications here that the property toolkit is more than just demolition. So this is also to improve public safety in our neighborhoods. It helps fire, police, and animal control, encourage redevelopment of these structures, create buildable lots for new construction, improve neighborhood identity and aesthetics, thereby improving environment for our neighbors and our businesses, and to create affordable housing opportunities. So here is just a snapshot of the funding that is proposed for the property toolkit. And some of the things that this would pay for is the rehabilitation of structures, strategic property acquisitions, and there is some demolition of vacant, condemned, derelict, or blighted structures. Most of these have been derelict for over 20 years. develop pre-approved building plans for affordable housing so that a developer could go in there and already have something as a building plan that's already approved so they could move forward to help those neighborhoods meet long-term comprehensive plan goals for affordable housing and neighborhood revitalization. So it really is more than just demolition. One thing to note about this, in the community development budget, when it was submitted, there was $100,000 for demolition. We as in me, pulled that $100,000 out in order to help balance the general fund. So if this project does not move forward as submitted, we need to make sure that we do put some funds back in the community development budget, or it's really gonna cripple them to help with those blighted properties. So just a footnote there. And then Tom Martin is here in case you have further questions.
Mr. Mission?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I saw, this may require time, this may not. I saw the bill that was just passed that expanded the ability to do this to commercial structures. Is that currently in our ordinance?
We would have to put that in the ordinance. I'm unaware if the governor has signed that yet.
I think he has.
Did he?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's great. So one of the things, you saw Garnett Street and the very expensive cost of demolishing that building. What that bill allows is for us to assess the same $500 monthly penalty as we do on residential. Yes, sir, for commercial properties.
And then eventually to tear them down, right?
If needed, but it would take a very long time at $500 per month to demolish a commercial property. A prime example of that is the old candle factory that burnt several years ago. That's still sitting there. Yes, sir.
Got it.
And to be clear, we do bill the property owner for the cost of the demolition. And statute of limitations is 20 years. So if it's not paid, it's added to the property as a cost, and we can collect that over 20 years. So that is something that we work together with for the collection of this demo cost.
How are we doing with recovery on that right now?
We do okay. Some of these lots where a structure has been demoed will end up in a sale for unpaid taxes, and we can redeem it that way. We'll collect it that way. We do our best not to write those off.
I think that answers my questions. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Okay, moving on to tax relief for the elderly and disabled. This chart shows you a 5-year history of what has happened. So we've grown from 2020 to 24, the number of applicants from 494 to 541. The amount of relief has grown from 491,000 to 612,000. And with the average amount of relief per citizen from $995 to $1,132. So this just gives you a snapshot of the last 5 years. And the income limit for these 5 years, as it currently is $48,200. So if you'll flip there. So what has been proposed?
Back.
Forward. Thanks. Sorry. No, it's fine. So you'll see where regardless of whether it's a multiple owners or a single owner, the current income limit is $48,200. And that multiple and single owner, the owners, their names have to be on the deed, okay? So what is being proposed is a single owner would have a $60,000 limit instead of $48,200, and we would create a new category of a dual owner, which could be a husband and wife, it can be a mother and a child, it could be survival rights for an elderly parent where the home has been put in the child's name. So it really broadens that category and really helps more people qualify. So the proposed income level would be $90,000 if there was more than one owner. We've added $500,000 in the proposed budget to pay for this expanded program to $1,150,000. And instead of about 650 citizens being impacted, it would be about 1,300. And if you look at that, that equates to about $884 per eligible citizen, but that depends on the number of applications and also the related parcels. But again, Mitch Knuckles is here in case you have other questions.
Mr. Ferrari?
I just want to say this is exactly what I was looking for, and so thank you to staff, to Mitch and team for including this. I think in this inflationary environment, there's nothing more impactful we can do than to lower this burden. I know we have to be competitive. I believe Danville just did something recently on this as well. It may have been in their last budget. And that's partly my inspiration for asking for it. But again, I commend you all, and I sincerely hope and I believe this council will unanimously support this direction.
Just one other note, this does leave the net worth limit unchanged at $100,000, but also to note is the value of the home is not considered in the amount of net worth. So this would be cash and investments. Yes?
Thank you for answering that question, because that was the number one question that I had was, what happens when somebody's home is paid off? And, you know, the net worth exceeds that threshold, but that answers that question. I didn't want to see a situation where somebody having their home paid off would prevent them from being able to access that.
No, the home value is not included in net worth.
Ms. Reed?
Thank you. I think this is great. I know I asked about this a couple years in the first budget that I sat through. And, you know, we get calls and emails, and I get stopped about this all the time from mostly our elderly, you know, people that are on fixed incomes, and they don't get a lot of adjustments in their income. I mean, they're not significant enough to keep up with the inflation that we're seeing, and so I know this would make a huge difference, so. And our disabled as well, so I think this is great and would make a huge difference, so thank you for putting this together.
Anyone else? Mr. Deemer?
I also appreciate the efforts to do this, and I've met a lot of people in Ward 3 that struggle with this. I think for the elderly, this is a good idea. Mitch, I appreciate the separation. That seems really appropriate. You know, the idea that we have limited income in the city and unlimited expenses still haunts me every day, because like we've heard, there's a lot of unmet infrastructure needs, both roads, schools, you name it. Everything seems to have been neglected for quite a long time, and now we're coming along and trying to fix all that. And when you tell me you're fixing the pipes at 1% a year, I know that's somebody else's problem. I won't be around, but it seems like a really slow schedule to do something that's so critical to our daily lives. Flushing that toilet, as Winter says, is pretty critical. So I do want to say, in general, I want to make sure that everybody understands that sometimes people on fixed incomes aren't that way because of their age. There are a lot of folks that are on fixed incomes that don't match the age category. And one of the things I try to do, Mr. Mayor, is I try to make sure if we are providing tax relief to people that we were careful not to pick winners and losers unless there's a really good reason. I want to provide tax relief to everybody. I've been open about that. I'm very in favor of doing that in a way that impacts larger majority of Lynchburg citizens and not necessarily a narrow area. So again, I appreciate the efforts in this category. Anytime you lower taxes, I'm going to be pleased. But I want to remind people this affects everybody when we raise taxes all across the board. And it's not just the elderly who have fixed incomes. There's a lot of people who have medical issues, other things, and their pay doesn't go up. But we keep going back to them over and over again, asking them for more and more money. And it's tough. So I just don't want to forget those folks. Thank you, though.
Mr. Mission.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One alibi, found a 2008 News and Advance article. City was expected to pay more than $5 million for Greenview Drive expansions after that was approved, and in today's dollars, that's about $7.6 million. So it is absolutely a precedent for the city to do those improvements when these kinds of investments in our city are made. Thank you.
Mr. Wilder.
Yes, thank you for the information. How do a person qualify for that? Is it based like income? Do they submit certain statements? How does that normally work? I'm just curious about that, if anyone asks me.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, it's means tested against the income and net worth. And currently, as Donna said, the income limitation is $48,200. And that's the most restrictive piece of what we have is the income. And the dual income, I really know that's gonna open it up for a lot of folks where you have two income, a spouse, and it's gonna allow for those two incomes to qualify. And it really does take, as anybody with a family knows, it costs more for two people to survive than it does for one. And it is income-based, and that is our biggest restriction to qualification is income.
Is there a time, I just don't know, is there a time period they have to submit the application for that, or?
Well, we send out the renewals the second week of June, and they're due back on or before August 1st. But then we go through a very extensive process. I mean, you know, we're dealing with elderly folks, so we go through a very extensive process trying to notify them by telephone, email, any way we can get a hold of them to have them filed. And we are allowed to consider hardship cases, and that's exactly what I do. If it's an issue, we consider it a hardship, and we get them in the program as soon as we can.
Thank you, appreciate it. Good to know this information. Thank you.
So when my neighbor asked me about tax relief, I can say, yes, we do have a program.
Oh, yes, we do.
Yes.
Just give them a quick question. How, are we basing the net worth on just their declaration alone, or is there any verification? How's that work?
Well, we definitely verify. We have access to income tax information, so we utilize that, and when there's evidence that, you know, we need to investigate, we investigate and go from there.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Knuckles.
Thank y'all very much.
And I believe the city manager touched on our budget and brews with 79 residents in attendance. We are putting together the list of questions, and we'll have those out on the city's website in the next week.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for this opportunity. We're tracking your questions throughout this process. Bringing you back live updates. You can see it's always moving forward. So with that, Mr. Mayor, turn back to business item briefings if you have it.
Thank you.
Oh, great time.
Oh, Mr. Wilder?
Once again, for the budget and brews, thank you so much for your team, your staff, all coming out all over the city, going to every single ward. You know, I really appreciate that, giving the citizens of Lynchburg a say in the budget and able to be up front and ask questions. So I really appreciate the staff going out there and do that. Appreciate it.
Okay, our business item briefing, 2611 Campbell Avenue, conditional use permit for pawn shop. Ms. Rachel.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. The purpose of this CUP petition, or conditional use permit, is to adjust the operating hours and allow the sale or pawn of firearms at an existing pawn shop. The Planning Commission held a public hearing regarding this petition on February 26th. The motion to approve the petition failed in a tie with 3 for and 3 against, with 1 absent. This item would return for city council action on April 18th. Next slide. The property has been zoned R3 medium-density residential district since 1978. Our future land use map recommends a traditional residential use for the subject property. Small retail uses can be consistent with this land use designation. Next slide. So how did we get to the point of having a pawn shop in a residential district? Prior to the city's zoning ordinance rewrite in 2016, the Board of Zoning Appeals, or BZA, was able to issue conditional use permits. There was a provision in that ordinance that stated the BZA could do this in certain instances. The ordinance said that a conditional use permit could be granted for commercial uses that were located within existing structures built prior to 1978, when no exterior structural alterations would be needed to the building. This was written into our ordinance to provide flexibility for nonconforming structures that had been annexed into the city. So the Board of Zoning Appeals approved this CUP request to operate a pawn shop in the existing building at their March 25th, 2014 meeting. The board set conditions regarding operating hours, prohibiting the pawn of firearms, signage, etc. The current owner then leased this pawn shop from the previous owner in 2016 and later purchased the property in 2021. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or ATF, issued a firearms license to this location in 2021. The zoning division recently became aware of firearm sales at this location when investigating a signed ordinance violation complaint in December of 2024. Once the owner, who had, again, purchased that property in 2020, became aware of the existing conditions on the CUP prohibiting the firearm sales, they submitted a public hearing application to revise these conditions. Next slide. The proposed amendments to the conditional use permit are listed here. These changes should have limited impact on the surrounding area since the pawn shop has existed since 2014 and has held a firearms license since 2021. This item would return for a city council public hearing on April 8th. Thank you.
Mr. Ferrari.
Is staff aware of if the ATF approved their ability to sell firearms or not?
Yes, so the ATF did issue the firearms license in 2021, and we looked into this. They contacted the zoning administrator, who is a different zoning administrator than the 2014 zoning administrator, as they typically do before issuing a license. It seems like that's kind of built into their process, which we appreciate, to inquire about any zoning restrictions. The zoning administrator was under the impression that this pawn shop was simply non-conforming or grandfathered, and did not realize that there was a CUP in place that specifically prohibited firearm sales. Most pawn shops have firearm sales. Lynchburg being an older city, we have these non-conforming uses. That is much more common than this sort of unique situation. We don't have a lot of CUPs issuing commercial uses in residential districts. That's not even allowed in our ordinance anymore. So it sort of slipped between the cracks because it is such a unique situation.
So help me understand that then. So if the limitation, I'm trying to regurgitate this to ask the question. So if the limitation on selling or conducting business a specific way, that practice of putting it in a conditional use permit is something we don't typically do? Is that what you're saying?
The zoning administrator didn't even explore the possibility of a CUP because the CUP is no longer a possibility. He thought it was simply a non-conforming commercial in a residential area.
Here's what I'm driving at.
Okay.
If we don't practice that anymore, then if we started to, would we, A, be in violation of our own ordinance, and B, setting a new precedent that we do it?
So the city attorney met with the zoning administrator, the director, and myself, and we talked about this. Since the CUP lawfully existed at the time of the ordinance adoption, it can continue. However, since the BZA no longer has the ability to issue a conditional use permit, and council does have that ability, we felt like the best option for them was to come before council to request the conditions be amended. I know the ordinance isn't in your packet because we don't do that until we get to public hearing, but we put some language in there about this being a peculiar situation, specifically why we're doing it in this case, and how it's not something we intend to do on a regular basis. There's, as far as I know, not a lot of these cases floating out there. I think this is probably one of the last ones the BZA ever issued like that.
So, Mr. Frawley, I would just add to that, too. I think the only alternative, and Rachel, correct me if I'm wrong, would be a rezone
and what city staff was trying to do, especially after I had talked to them too, was to give credit for the fact that they had a validly issued conditional use permit, but because, as Rachel had said, there's no way to amend it in the same process that it was issued. It would have to come back before city council because they are the body that would be able to issue it and amend it if it chose to.
I was going to add, we did discuss the rezoning option because it's either a CUP or a rezoning. And pawn shops are only allowed in B3, B4, B5, or IN2. So rezoning to one of those other districts would present more challenges. There are additional setback requirements when you have commercial abutting commercial zoning against residential zoning. There's also a buffer that's required, and you could potentially be opening the doors to some more noxious uses, like in the B3 district. You could have drive-through restaurant or something like that, that may be less than ideal next to the residential neighborhood.
So final question for you then. It's a bit of a dumb question, but it's just so for folks at home. What is staff's recommendation since the planning commission was split on this?
Staff recommended approval,
And if I can interject, approval of
staff recommended approval of the amended conditions, and the amended conditions are the additional, I think it's 30 minutes before and after the closing time, and the striking of condition 3 about firearms.
So it would permit firearms. That's staff's.
That's staff's recommendation, just because it doesn't change the way it's been functioning since 2021, seemingly without issue. So.
Thank you. My question for Matt. So if this was to stay in for some reason, do we forbid the sale of knives anywhere?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think there's any, I suppose you could if it was part of a conditional use permit, but I'm not aware of that.
Paintball markers, airsoft?
Not that I'm aware of.
So you can see where I'm driving at. I think the public and everyone knows where this council will go on this particular item. I won't take up any more time. I hope council will adopt staff's recommendations as I understand them. And this hopefully doesn't turn into anything more than a simple approval of what they're proposing. I won't be at the next meeting. So it is my sincere hope that council will be adopting this. And I pray I don't have to come back and cast a tie-breaking vote, but I don't think I will. But thank you.
Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's interesting. I'm actually curious, is there a way to research to find out if we have this particular restriction on any other properties? Is that a difficult thing to do?
It would probably be through a conditional use permit. We can try.
Yeah, because I'm curious about that. And then the other question I have about that is, for research purposes, do we have anything that restricts people from having FFLs in their homes? Do we know?
I need a brochure on FFL. It's an FFL.
Federal firearms license.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something I'd be interested in finding out, is there's something, because if that is the case, we need to reverse whatever that is.
You say the question again? I'm sorry.
FFL, do we have anything that restricts people from obtaining FFLs at their private residence?
Federal firearms.
It's a license to be a
License to-
firearms dealer, essentially, right? Because I've personally known lots of people that have had FFLs at their homes, right? So that's a question that I have is there anything that we currently have that's restricting that? And if we are, I'd like to revisit that to get rid of that restriction, so to speak. Because sometimes you need them just for certain collectibles, curios, relics, different antique firearms that are still functional. You've got to have a federal firearms license just to have those things, and people have them in their homes. So I just want to make sure we're not restricting that.
Is there any more questions for Ms. Rachel?
Can we close all the businesses on Sunday? Go back to the 90s?
If you choose to stay at home on Sunday, Mr. Missions, you do so. Is there any more questions for Ms. Rachel?
Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call. Mr. Ferrari? Ms. Reed? Mr. Wilder?
I have been so busy, I don't remember what I've done so much. So, again, I do know that Beacon of Hope is having an event the first week of April. I think it's called EFX or FX or whatever. But again, just to work, what is it called? HopeX, thank you. I know it's X something. But again, I'm just thankful for the work they do in our community. We're getting scholarships for our kids in our public school system. That's so important for encourage kids for higher education, whether it's technical school or vocational school. So just to have a network in our community for our public education kids, it is so important. So I appreciate that work, and I appreciate everyone supporting our children in education and ways to do that. We went to the Department of Education breakfast, I think, about a week or so ago, and just see so many, with breakfast superintendent, and to see persons there that support our school system, businesses volunteering their time to make our kids better, make our schools better. So we appreciate the business community coming together for our public education. It's always so important to do that. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Ms. Timmer?
Thank you. I've got a list of thank yous today. So I've had 3 encounters with the fire department in the past 2 weeks that were very unexpected. The first was an ambulance that was on fire, open flame. And fire department, I'm sure, responded very well. I received a call about that. The second was I received a text from someone in my ward who sent me pictures of their property where there was an open flame fire, and the fire department responded and put that out. And then I just had the fire department go down my street, and I saw a gentleman that I had met while touring Station 4 driving the fire truck. So I just wanted to give a shout out to our wonderful fire department and the responses that they do all the time that we often miss. I know when I lived in San Diego, the sirens became a background noise, and that's very different here. But often we miss how active they really are in our community. Also want to give a shout out to Javon, who came by and helped with brush and bulk this week, and was very resourceful to me as I was trying to clean up the yard, and I've got a lot more work to do, but he was very helpful and very kind. And then the folks at Parkview Mission had the opportunity to do a tour, and you can hear about all the different programs that are happening within one group or the city, but unless you see how they really fit together, it can be a bit confusing because it seems like there's redundancy, but really there's a lot of collaborative overlap that's strategic, not just redundant. And so really appreciate what Parkview Mission is doing there. And then a request for city staff: if there is opportunity for a potential workspace for council within City Hall to be able to meet with constituents, or as we're working on a project, to be able to kind of interact a bit more with city staff. Yes, print. You see my binder bags that I'm carrying around, and they're breaking, the bag lady. But that would be a really resourceful tool, especially during budget season. So thank you.
Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple things. One is, appreciate you guys catching the snafu with the assessments that were mailed to the wrong addresses, and correcting that so quickly. That was like 2,500, something in that ballpark, I think. 2,900. Yeah, appreciate you catching that. Now with that, I've gotten a lot of feedback from citizens on this, that while I appreciate the information that's been provided here, with I think it's the Transparency and Taxation Act is what it was called. It's very confusing on this final column that says equalized. And I've heard from a lot of folks that think they're getting a .767 tax rate, right? So whatever we're doing or communicating, we are not adequately communicating to our citizens that the budget is proposed at 89 cents, that on this document, and I don't know if for the future, if we could highlight a block or something to that effect to make it clear what the proposed rate is, because people are not clear about what the proposed rate is. They're not clear about the increases that they're getting. So I do think that it would be beneficial for some kind of communication to come from the city that makes it clear to the citizens that the rate is proposed at 89 cents, that 89 cents is a tax increase according to the Code of Virginia, and that we are, currently, as it stands, the proposal is to raise taxes on our citizens in this budget cycle, because people are walking around telling me, that is really nice that we're gonna get a .767 tax rate. And then when I tell them that's not happening, they aren't happy. So it would be good to be crystal clear about that in our communication. Second thing is, want to see still what we can figure out about that, the maintenance plan for the EMS equipment, for the fire department, stretchers, monitors, chest compression devices, those things. They're in pretty lousy shape, the equipment that we have. And when I look at some of these things that we're proposing to spend money on in the CIP, like, I don't know, property toolkits or other things that aren't necessary, and then I weigh that against the necessary need of having, the best devices that we can to defibrillate and perform CPR on our citizens when they're experiencing cardiac arrest, right? We used to have, I don't know what it has been lately, but I remember we were getting the gold from the American Heart Association. I think we've kind of slipped behind on that, right? Where some of those performance metrics on our ability to resuscitate people when they experience sudden cardiac arrest or some kind of medical emergency that leads to cardiac arrest, that we aren't we're still doing well, but we're not quite where we used to be. And when I see equipment that's falling apart, and that's not a priority in our budget, that tells me that the lives of our citizens aren't a priority. And I don't like that, because the lives of our citizens should be the number one priority. So I would like to see what we could do to move things around to make sure that we are funding that necessary equipment for our fire department. Thank you.
Mr. Deemer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to update a little bit on the visits I've been doing with different city departments that started out rather interesting with almost an accident. Survived that. Then the bell tower in the courthouse almost cost me my permanent hearing loss. I don't know if I'd even shared that with everybody. But also, the fire department ride along ended up being the least eventful event that I've had so far, which doesn't exactly make a lot of sense, but it was. And then I went out to visit our new airport director at the airport, and he had to run off because there was an ambulance coming in, and he was notified that there was a emergency landing taking place. So it's always been sort of exciting. I'm getting ready to do the water. I know, I'm beginning to think maybe I should just, call it in on Zoom, but I do look forward to continuing the visits. The school visits have been great. Also, I'd like to do the water department. I meant to mention that with Tim here, but I had to postpone that for personal reasons. But I really like to get that going and see the line from the Peddler Reservoir, as well as some of the other critical infrastructure that keeps our water going so we don't have a Richmond situation. I agree on the assessments that I think there is a little bit of confusion about them, and we might need to come up with some communications from the city to help people be a little less confused. I'm getting emails on that issue, and I've shared that with y'all. On the dashboard, I still agree that we should probably have some kind of graph or chart that shows a breakdown of the revenues that come in to our wonderful city from the different wards, so we would be able to look at it by ward. I think that actually makes a lot of sense. When we have developments in our ward, and we allow these things, and it brings in a lot of new tax revenue to the city, like is going to happen on all the developments we voted for recently. continuing revenue over and over again to help us pay for these infrastructure needs that have been neglected. I think I'd like to see which wards are contributing and what that amount is, and that sort of thing is very interesting to me. Also, I would like to give a shout out to somebody that's not a city employee, which is our Habitat for Humanity teams in Lynchburg that opened up another house in Ward 3 at that development there off Ford Avenue. And I was very excited to attend that and to see the family moving in and the faces involved. It's great that there are so many housing opportunities coming from all different directions, both private and public, to help make sure people have a roof over their head so that we don't get into our homes and then close the door behind us, as we recently heard. We need to keep that door open for new families and new people to get that American dream of home ownership. So, and the ability to pass it on in generational wealth that I think is so critical to creating long-term prosperity in our city. So that's it for me, and I appreciate all the presentations the city staff did. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one here, Vietnam's Veterans Remembrance Day. This week we honor our veterans, Vietnam veterans, on National Vietnam War Veterans Day. We recognize their courage, sacrifice, dedication that helped shape the freedoms we cherish today. There will be an event held Friday at Monument Terrace. A special thanks to Dr. Beth White for helping initiate this proclamation request in honor of her late husband, a proud Vietnam veteran. Thank you.
What's the date on that again?
Friday, this Friday, Monument Terrace,
What time? 12?
12. Closed session.
Closed session for items 3, 4, and 5, but not number 6.
Do I have a second?
Second.
You want to speak to you?
Just briefly, I'd like to use this again as a shameless plug for a rules change. We've had a culture on council that has kind of gone back and forth in a number of areas, and I think that there is opportunity to create clarity and move away from premature action and to put a process of deliberation behind it. And I can speak to that further, but I would just value not going into closed session for item number 6 at this time.
Mr. Ferrari? Okay, just a second.
Thank you.
Before we take the vote, I'll just read those into the record really quickly. So it's consideration of a closed meeting to discuss the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds where discussion in an open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A29 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended. The subject of the closed meeting being specific to a future contract between the city and Certainteed. And number 4 is consideration of a closed meeting for the purpose of a briefing by staff to Council on Public Safety and Vulnerability pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A19 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended. And number 5 is consideration of a closed meeting to discuss appointments for vacancies to the following boards and commissions: Economic Development Authority, Historic Preservation Committee, Lynchburg Redevelopment Housing Authority, and Planning Commission pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended.
May I have a motion to go into closed session?
We got that in a second. I'll go ahead and call for the vote. Councilmember Feraldi?
Yes.
Councilmember Missions?
Yes.
Councilmember Reed?
Yes.
Councilmember Timmer?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilder?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Deemer?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0.
We're now in closed session.